Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Forward Women's Leadership Forum Conversation Live. I'm Heather Harris, and joining me today is the fabulous Chiara Borrello, friend and colleague, all the way from Montreal or Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It's wonderful to have you here, Chiara. Before we start, let me just read your bio. So, Ms. Chiara Borrello supports organizations to develop human centric, self managed teams and creative collaborative cultures that are able to adapt to our unprecedented changing times. She encourages leaders with or without titles, which is always important, to turn within in order to mindfully achieve their goals. This is made possible through her work of awareness of self and others that begins with creating the necessary climate for team members to communicate authentically about what it is at the heart of their collective efforts. In addition, she engages people to get acquainted with their sacred talents to expand their creative nature. Ms. Borrello has 10 years experience in senior management for high-end fashion houses and manufacturing, 10 years of personal and organizational development, and 6 years in collaborating with organizations to create human-centric self-managed teams or self-managed organizations. Her experience is founded on a master's degree in organizational development systems thinking and a BA in history of Western culture and society from Concordia University. She also earned a certificate in marketing from McGill University. According to Ms. Borrello, she is most grateful for her certificate in focusing, a body centered approach to psychotherapy developed by Dr. Eugene Gendlin in the 1970s.
Mm.
Whoa, welcome.
Thank you, Heather. It's always great to chat with you. Genuinely, I always have a good time with you, and I learn something about myself um, every time I just connect with you. So thank
Well,
you.
it's mutual. So thank you. So before we start, I just want to remind everyone this is the Women's Leadership Forum. Please connect with us on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for these fabulous conversations. Number of different hosts, lots of different guests, plenty of knowledge to be shared. Also, coming up on July 10th from 12 to 5 p.m., we have the Virtual Founders Tea and Business Bootcamp. That's the Virtual Founders Tea and Business Bootcamp. It's July 10th from 12 to 5 p.m. And the cost is only, I'm saying only $99. Register today. Register during this talk. Register after this talk. All right, Kiara. While people are looking for the button to register, let's talk about connecting through creativity. You know, I think we all want our creative juices to flow, regardless of what we are doing in our lives. But when we think about creativity, the idea of being artistic seems to lurk around there as well. Is there a difference between creativity and being artistic?
Absolutely. First, I would say that creativity is innate, and none of us believe it. When I talk to people, their eyes glaze over, and they say, "Look, I don't have an artistic bone." And honestly, being artistic, having those gifts of being creatively artistic is one thing. I mean, those are capabilities that some of us are born with. I love art. I make art. I don't expose my art. I'm not that kind of artist, but I love doing it, and it's really helps my own journey inward when I'm actually problem solving. I'm going to give you some examples today on how I use art actually that I'm really bad at, but it's just using your hands, letting go of your thinking is really what's important. Creativity is actually innate. We're born with it. Um, we're actually born as creators, and we disconnect from that because it's never nurtured. It's not nurtured. And I believe that every single one of us, there's not 99%, 100% of us are born with gifts. And by the time we're 10 years old, those gifts are not being utilized because we have to conform to our systems. And guess what? Our systems these days aren't exactly working for us.
That's true.
So it's such a wonderful time to learn how to go inward and living your life from the inside out and start getting acquainted how we use our creativity. How I use it and the way you use it, Heather, is going to be completely different. And there's no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps on how to find your creativity. It's learning how to pay attention to something else on the inside.
We want a formula for everything, right? I know when I'm teaching, students say, but just tell me how to do that,
Yeah.
not how to think it, not how to feel it, not how to do both at the same time, but just tell me how to do it. And go ahead.
No, well, for some things, it's really important. You know, you want a plan and you need to have those 1, 2, 3 steps. I watched Champlain Bridge, from the South Shore of where I live into Montreal being rebuilt. It was extraordinary to watch that bridge being built. I can tell you that when we're building planes or aircrafts, aircraft, planes, same thing, or bridges, uh, we need plans, right? But it's not what makes us create those bridges, because then we have to learn how to adjust them. We're always adjusting, and it's that creative listening, our capacity to listen to when to adjust, makes that bridge or airplane at the end of the day um, much more efficient and effective in the world. So we need both, and learning how to use both depending on what you're doing is really what's at the core of creativity, because we're all different. And yeah.
So what we have now in society is basically a false sense of separateness, right? You're either creative over here or you're not. That's what people like to tell you. You know, this person is very creative, this person is not.
Yeah.
And as you say, we are born creative. Sir Ken Robinson would say that
Yeah.
with his famous TED Talk, right? He says we
Yeah.
go to school to learn to get rid of our creativity. And then even when we find ways to re-engage with that creativity, people try to talk us out of it and say, well, how are you going to live? Right? If you want to do that, especially when the creativity goes into the artistic realm, it's like, are you going to be able to live if you paint, if you play music, if you dance? Is that a life that you want? And so even artists sometimes feel that, let me just do something else, because the society,
Mm-hmm.
the societal systems is saying that I cannot be fulfilled financially with
Yeah.
this. So then we make our decisions about how creative we are willing to be, sometimes based on finances.
Exactly. That's very true. And I want to point to something that is invisible, about what you talked about. So we're all pretty much brainwashed about how we should live our lives, basically, is what you're saying. We have to go to school and you get a job and then you wait till your retirement. That doesn't work anymore, of course. But there's still an expectation for that. Even the education system, as Sir Ken Robinson said, that it's so archaic that we know it, but we still haven't changed it. So what that means is that we're following a system that doesn't work, and it's going against our own nature. But it becomes part of our thinking. This is where I'm getting at the invisible thing. It becomes part of our thinking. And that's where the issue begins. Because, it's not like we're, purposefully brainwashed, but I'm just using that word to exaggerate it. But it's so important to pay attention to my thoughts, because wherever my thoughts go, my energy flows into that. So paying attention to how I'm thinking will also dictate how I feel and I see life in a particular perception. And that's all external. Now, if you become curious with your own thinking, if I become curious about my own thinking, maybe that hamster wheel is probably going to slow down, because we have more than just um, thoughts that coming through us. There's felt senses that we could feel in our gut. How do we know um, when we get home. I mean, we take these things for granted. There's
We,
something that brought us home. It's not just a memory.
it's true. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I was saying to him, we often build stories around our beliefs,
Exactly.
and we don't often edit those stories. People often encourage us to edit our stories, right? Because this is our life, and our life is being created often by those stories that we tell based upon
Mhm.
those beliefs that we may or may not question. And you're right, being curious about
Mhm.
the things that we are thinking
Mhm.
then enables us to say there might be a different way to do this.
Exactly. Exactly. Something just comes up from within oneself. You know, even at work these days, we were talking to Colette earlier. People are afraid to go back to work right now
Yes.
because they have it feels safer to be at home to get, and you actually we're much more, it's proven, people are now saying we're much more efficient when your bosses trust you to get things done. Now, it isn't true that it's efficient for everyone, because there are some organizations that they're monitoring you through the
Screen time.
screen time, and you have to check in, and so it actually added more stress. And there's an incredible, crackdown of the human psyche at that point. So it doesn't help creativity; it actually destroys it, and there's no sense of safety within oneself. So what do? There's a fear that comes up of losing your job because, well, COVID is saying, the situation, the economic situation is bad, and so on and so forth. So as long as we're paying attention to those thoughts about, the economy is bad and so on and so forth, I'm stuck with a job that I hate. But that's what's going to kill us.
Hmm. Hmm. And it's interesting because the economy is bad for the average person, but the stock market has been fantastic for the wealthy, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
One of the things you mentioned in talking about business and fear of returning to work and efficiency at work
Hmm.
is trust.
Exactly.
When we talk about trust and our business lives and creativity, how do those three intertwine? Trust, our business lives, and creativity.
Yeah. So if I'm just going to give you an example, if you're my boss and I fear you, or I feel intimidated from you by you, and I just want you to be happy, I am going to not be creative and respond to what I think is going to make you happy as a boss. Or because, for whatever reasons, I might like you a lot, I want to impress you, I want a next, want to climb the ladder, so I need your help to help me climb the ladder. So I'm going to do things that are so against my own authenticity that it's going to, and people feel it though, and you don't get the job, or you don't get that salary that you want, or climb the ladder. So the 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 thing with trust is that you have to start, trust starts from within. Unless we learn how to deal with our own thoughts. So if I think that I need to manipulate a situation, I need to I need to pay attention to that, because if I follow that thought, I could manipulate the situation, but I can also risk my relationship with you, which is probably more important than anything else.
Well, your relationship with yourself, because you're going against yourself.
Yes, because
There's always a consequence for that, right?
it works both ways, right? So
Yes,
you're
yes.
ruining your relationship with yourself, but also with other people. And then you wonder why you didn't get the job. And so you start bad mouthing your boss, right? So, so I'm just going to ask you to
No,
ask
no, the
make
connection between
it.
trust,
Yeah.
creativity, and business. And so you're talking about that whole idea of trust and being authentic. And one of the things people talk about in business is fit. Fit. Anytime you're on a search committee, it's like, does this person fit? And we have to question that idea of fit, because if we're looking for fit, we're looking for people who are not going to question the way things are currently being done.
Exactly. So that person who's asking, does this person fit? They're basically saying, are there, they're basically saying, here, this is the way it works, and we want people to fit into our culture. That's the big words that they use, right? Our mission, our cultures, our values. Except one of the things that I have noticed is that a lot of people within organizations will weaponize their values against each other because they have personal values that they come from that are completely in opposition
Sometimes.
to the values of an organization's often. So and the leaders also weaponize the values that they have against their own employees.
Because if you're weaponizing your values, most organizational members will say, well, this is what the values
Mm-hmm.
this is what the values are on paper, but this is not what's being practiced in the organization, because the values are so fabulous. Usually they allow for expansiveness, they allow for creativity, right? They
Exactly.
allow for questioning. And so we conflate the person who is the best fit for the job with the person who is the best person for the job. Those two people are not the same necessarily.
Exactly. And there's a lot of bias that we carry, right? And being able to decipher that these days, I mean, it's coming out a lot more, and people can't get away with it anymore. They're trying, except they're now wondering, what do I do next? Well, learn how to pay attention to your thoughts. What's going on in your little hamster brain, all of our hamster brains. But we just want to come back to the idea of trust and safety, because there's this lot of talk, in organizations these days. And Google many years ago did you probably know, a survey of what makes a good team. And the results were that it's that the people who work together felt safe together. And that meant they could be totally themselves. They can get into a conflict and they're okay with each other to be open, and they just straight up tell each other what they need to. The thing with safety is that within an organization, for example, or even in a team that they didn't talk about that I've discovered, is that it's not so much feeling safe, meaning, oh, I don't feel threatened by you. If you and I are in a team, it's not the reason why I might feel unsafe with you is because I can't connect with you. So people actually, there's some studies, there's neuroscience these days with quantum theory principles that are actually proving that if we don't connect physically, like it's a physical thing, because we have neurons in our hearts and in our guts other than just our brains. And when those things align, we feel safe together. So it's not the absence of threat very often as much as is the capacity to connect with each other that creates safety within teams or organizations. So sometimes if a person does not feel safe in an organization, it's probably a good reason. They can't connect to those values that we just talked about. They can't connect to some of the decisions that they're making. So there's some wisdom in there, and it has to be paid attention. But what's really going on in our little hamster wheel, we never pay attention to. So that's what I mean by going inward. To be able to be creative is to stop and slow down that hamster wheel. Otherwise, we're just going to try to make another person happy, or trying to get away from someone, often in organizations, trying to cover our butt if we make mistakes, because we're not allowed to make mistakes. And I mean, we learn through mistakes.
And creativity is fostered through mistakes. It's
Exactly.
fostered through imagination. So
Exactly.
give us a sense of what kind of organization we would have if we were actually connecting to the values of the organization, not in terms of fit, but in terms of alignment with
Mm,
those organizations, with the organizational values, and being able to express creatively, because organizations have to solve problems in order to achieve their goals. Creativity is necessary for solving problems. But like you said, if you are not connected either to the values or to the people in the organization, then you have an organization that is struggling and stagnant,
Yeah.
because the very people demanding that you come up with an idea really don't want to hear the idea, because it's not part of the fit of the regimented, system that they have in place. So if we move from this system of fit, the fantasy of fit, to this alignment of values and expansion,
Mm.
what would creativity look like in such an organization? What might it look like?
Yeah, actually, I have an example from a client who's a self-managed organization. And a self-managed organization, you have no choice but to be transparent. So
Mm,
even how much money they make, etc. And although I have to say it does remove many layers of hierarchy, there's still an element of hierarchy because there are still the co-founders. So I'm just going to talk about a particular client. There are four co-founders. And when they started to work, they had a mission that, so what they do is they cut metal sheets that are precision metal sheets to make machines for hospitals. So, it could be, X-ray machines and stuff like that. So it's a lot of precision work. And so they started this company because their parents were in it. And one of the biggest problems was there was a lot of errors, and there were a lot of, and that's very costly. And shipments were never made on time. So they wanted to serve the clients that way. But their mission, yes, that was client focused, but that's not where they come from. They want not only the client's well-being, but they wanted every single person in the organization to, to experience well-being in their lives at work, so they can go home and they have a pretty, a good day because they're taken care of. So I'll give you a few examples. So when they started this, it was just an idea, and they recognized how difficult it was for them to be vulnerable. So they each got a coach. The four leaders got a coach, and they really worked on themselves. They did this sort of like inside out work. And once they were comfortable enough, they started to create, they asked themselves, okay, what does it mean what does well-being mean? And so they said, well, so she was a mother. So the president was a mother of three children, and one was an adult, but the other ones were quite a bit younger. And she says, I want to be able to be home with my children. I want to be able to have my hours flexible. Now you might be thinking, well, presidents do that all the time. What's the difference? Well, she was making decisions not only for herself, but for every single employee as well, thinking, oh, there are some single parents out there. And it's not easy to show up at 9 o'clock for some. So they created about 6 shifts, people that can start, if they prefer to start at 7, at 8, at 9, and at 10. And then they put more because they were so happy together, and because they really achieved their goals of making precision tools, and as well as precision tools and delivering on time. That was the other one. So once they achieved this, they grew because of word of mouth. They had only one person in sales just answering phones. I mean, that's all they could do is take on the orders, because they were just amazing. But they were friendly. People are happy to come to work. It's not perfect. There's still some sort of conflict. But one of the beautiful things that they did was, in manufacturing, people don't give them time of day. Instead, they created what they called a university academy. And anybody that wants to do anything, if they want to advance in their lives, if they want any coaching, it's available to them. It doesn't matter who you are in the company. You have coaching or anything else that you want to learn that they feel that could help their lives and their work as well. So, and there's a lot of transparency. So nobody has any specific roles. job descriptions, they have roles, and it's all very customer oriented. And the people on the floor can call up their customers, like, "Oh, we're having a problem here in production. The sheet metals have not come in. We were expecting them, you know, in a week. Instead, it's been delayed because of customs. I don't know, whatever." So they talk directly to the client, the people on the floor.
So there's empowerment in creativity, right? We don't think of creativity and power together. People think of power as almost like that metal, hard, maybe a little shiny, right? But
Yeah.
creativity as power is something you're just talking about, power and empowerment.
Right. And so, one of the things we did was train some of the, people on the floor. And then they created their own universities, and they have full-time trainers now. But we took them through a process of listening to themselves from the inside, just listening to the hamster wheel. And there's ways of doing that that's very, very simple. And it creates an extraordinary atmosphere. It isn't perfect. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we just get up on the wrong side of the bed, but at least now they're trained, and they also were trained in nonviolent communication. And so it really, they focus on the well-being of not only the individuals that show up at work, but for their families as well.
So what you're happening is this, you have this back and forth connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Between creativity creating connection, and connection creating creativity, creativity creating trust, creating creativity creating power.
Right. So you're nurturing your creativity. You're nurturing your own sacred talents, because we all have sacred talents. And as you mentioned right at the beginning, you quoted Sir Ken Robinson. He's got a huge study around that. By the time, I think he said something like 6 or 7 or 8, we're done. Our genius is gone because of the way we, how we send our children to school, and we don't all learn at the same speed, et cetera, et cetera. So our creativity is never nourished. But if we start to nourish who we are as human beings, let's not call it creativity for a moment. Let's just call it just being human, because our nature is to be creative. I mean, look around us.
Yes.
With landscaping, and you as a teacher, I know that you've won awards, and that means that you are creative. You went outside the box. You didn't follow certain rules, probably, or but nobody does anything great without breaking the rules. Otherwise, we're all a bunch of robots.
That's right.
Well, that's because you're able to tap into your creativity. Writing books, as you do so well, is a creative process for you, because it's one of your gifts. Communication is one of your great gifts.
But like you said, we all have gifts, and it's like when you have children, adults go to little children and say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" They don't ask, "Who are you now?"
Yes, exactly.
Who are you now?
What
Because that
brings
little person will tell you, right?
Yeah,
I'd like
exactly.
to play in mud, or I like lizards, or who that child is now gives you a clue, a big clue into who
Exactly.
that person is going to be. But we just want to get them, right into the workforce. What do you want to do? Just choose from among these 5: fireman, police officer, doctor, lawyer, engineer.
No, exactly. And that's all you can choose from, because those are the noble, traits or whatever professions that people look up to.
Right, right.
But, if I think, nurturing creativity also, it helps us nurture our natural resilience and adaptation, because we're in adapting to what's going on at any moment in time. That is being creative. We're nourishing both resilience and creativity at the same time, because you can't separate those two anyway.
No, you can't. Chiara, my gosh, it is 6:29. We have come
Wow.
to the end of our fabulous conversation. I just want to remind everyone, you can find Chiara online. Just check, she's a coach, type her name in. You can Google her. You will find her. Remember that we have the virtual Founders Tea and Business Bootcamp on July 10th from 12 to 5 p.m. $99. Register today at forwardwlf.org. Thank you all for joining us. Please make sure you're back here on Monday, Wednesday, and next Friday for some more great conversation. I'm Heather Harris with Chiara Borrello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
Good
Heather.
night. Thank you, Chiara.